Forrest is a man with intellectual disabilities who, despite accidentally being involved in the most important historical events of his time, only wishes to reunite with his childhood love, Jenny. He waits for the bus on a bench, and while doing so, he shares his life story with the people sitting next to him. First, he recalls his childhood in Greenbow, Alabama. During that time, he wears leg braces to correct his spine, which becomes a subject of mockery and stares from people. His mother is very affectionate and loving, guiding him to not let anyone ridicule him or make him feel inferior. Forrest and his mother live in a large house in the countryside, and since they have many rooms, she rents out the empty ones. This leads young Forrest to meet a guest named Elvis Presley, whom he teaches a rather unique dance that later becomes globally famous. Afterwards comes Forrest's first day of school. The school bus picks him up, and all the kids reject him except for a girl named Jenny. She's the only one who offers him a seat beside her, and that's how Forrest meets the love of his life since then. Jenny and Forrest become best friends. Every day, they sit together and share everything about their days. Due to Forrest's intellectual and physical disabilities, his schoolmates often tease him. One day, they chase him, throwing stones, and Jenny encourages him to run. Forrest does, but in a way he has never done before. His leg braces break, revealing an astonishing ability to run. As the years pass, thanks to this incredible skill, Forrest earns a scholarship to study at the University of Alabama, playing for the football team. During his time at the university, Forrest loses contact with Jenny and becomes one of the top runners in his category, receiving recognition from President John F. Kennedy himself. Years go by, Forrest graduates, and then he enlists in the army. With his fellow soldiers, he faces the same rejection he experienced on the bus as a child. But just like back then, this time a guy named Bubba offers him a seat beside him. Forrest and Bubba become great friends. Bubba is obsessed with shrimp and convinces Forrest to open a shrimp business with him after their military service. Suddenly one day, they are informed that they will be sent to the Vietnam War. In the evening, Forrest discovers Jenny in a Playboy magazine. She was expelled from college and now works as a singer in a private club in Memphis. Without hesitation, before being sent to the war, Forrest takes a bus there. He discovers that the club is for desperate adults, and she sings naked. A man humiliates her while she sings, and Forrest defends her, trying to get her out of the place. He confesses his love, but Jenny rejects him and asks him to leave. Forrest tells her that he is going to Vietnam, and Jenny lets her guard down, making him promise that he will run when in a dangerous situation. As Forrest departs to Vietnam, he meets Lieutenant Dan there, who has a lot of experience and from whom he learns a great deal. The platoon prepares with very strict training, enduring all kinds of weather, but Forrest doesn't forget about Jenny. He writes her letters every night. One day, the platoon is ambushed. Forrest, as he promised Jenny, runs and manages to escape the attack. However, he realizes that Bubba is missing, so he goes back to find him. On the way, he encounters other comrades severely injured and saves them, including Lieutenant Dan, who asks Forrest to let him die there. Forrest refuses and saves him. When he returns to Bubba, he finds him dying, and he sadly passes away in Forrest's arms. After the ambush, Forrest is taken to the infirmary due to a gunshot wound he received in the buttocks. There, he encounters Dan and tries to cheer him up, but Dan is angry with Forrest because he lost both his legs and Forrest didn't let him die. During his time there, Forrest starts playing ping pong and discovers that he is incredibly good at it. Later, he returns home and is honored in Washington with the Medal of Honor for his bravery in the war by President Lyndon Johnson. Later, while wandering through the city, he ends up in a peaceful protest in the Pentagon Alley. By mistake, he is brought up on stage to say a few words about the Vietnam War. However, a military personnel disconnects the speaker, and absolutely no one hears the message he delivers. At that moment, a distant voice is heard. It's Jenny. Forrest runs towards her, and they reunite, bringing him great happiness. They spend the evening exploring the city streets, sharing their experiences. Jenny has become an anti-war activist and a drug-using hippie. She has a boyfriend, but Forrest witnesses him mistreating her. Unable to stand by, Forrest intervenes, giving the guy a beating in defense of Jenny. Forrest wonders how Jenny can be with someone who harms her, but despite this, the next morning, Jenny says goodbye to Forrest and leaves with her boyfriend to San Francisco. Soon, Forrest becomes a celebrity thanks to his amazing ability to play ping pong and represents the national team in a match against the Chinese team. Due to his achievements, despite his limitations, he is invited to a television program where he meets none other than John Lennon, who sits next to him. Upon leaving the program, Forrest encounters Lieutenant Dan, who has succumbed to alcohol and barely survives on a government pension. Forrest spends the Christmas holidays with him, and they become good friends. Forrest shares with him the plan he had with Bubba, and Dan incredulously responds that if he ever becomes the captain of a shrimp boat, he will be his first mate. Months later, the ping-pong team and Forrest are invited to the White House to meet President Nixon. However, Forrest is accommodated in a hotel where he accidentally uncovers one of the most significant political scandals in the United States, the Watergate case, leading to the president's resignation. Following this, Forrest receives a letter informing him that his military service has ended. He returns to his home in Greenbow, where he receives an offer to promote a brand of ping-pong paddles. Wanting to fulfill Bubba's promise, Forrest accepts the offer and uses the money to buy a shrimp boat, which he names after Jenny. On the other hand, Jenny is getting worse and considers taking her own life, but in the end, she decides not to do it. One day, while Forrest is on his boat, he sees Lieutenant Dan in the distance. Lieutenant Dan came to fulfill his promise to help him and joins Forrest. Initially, things don't go well for them, but soon Hurricane Carmen arrives and destroys all the boats except theirs. This leads them to catch immense amounts of shrimp every day, making a lot of money and expanding their business. Later on the boat, Lieutenant Dan finally thanks Forrest for saving his life. In the meantime, Forrest learns that his mother is very ill and rushes back home as quickly as he can. He takes care of her as she succumbs to cancer, and they have their final conversation. She tells him not to be afraid, that death is just a part of life, something we are all destined to experience. She says that she was meant to be his mother and did the best she could. She believes that everyone shapes their own destiny and that each person must do their best with what they are given. I think it's true that life may not give us the opportunity to choose our body, gifts, family, place, and time of birth, but perhaps it does offer the possibility to choose what to do with all of that. Maybe that's where our freedom lies. As Sartre said, we are what we do with what has been done to us. In that moment, Forrest asks her what her destiny is, and his mom responds with one of the most iconic lines in cinema: "You'll have to figure that out for yourself." Life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're gonna get. In the box of chocolates, there are some sweet ones, some bitter ones, different possibilities like in life. Still, you have to choose and discover which one you'll get, because if you don't, the chocolates go bad, and all the possibilities are lost, making you wish you had taken advantage when you could. And if you get a bitter one, you learn, and then a sweeter one may come next. Perhaps sadness for now, maybe pain later, but then you'll pick up joy again. Forrest's mother finally dies, and shortly thereafter, he discovers that Lieutenant Dan invested the profits from the business in a fruit company called Apple, making them multimillionaires. Forrest gives half of his fortune to Bubba's family for inspiring the project. He also donates a significant sum to the church and the Fishermen's Hospital. Forrest understands that nothing comes from nothing and that any success is never solely individual merit. There are people who support and help us, enabling us to do what we do. Forrest comprehends and appreciates this, reciprocating the gratitude by feeling part of something larger than himself, thus giving purpose to his life. After all of this, Forrest receives an unexpected visit from Jenny. They spend days catching up and keeping each other company until Forrest gathers the courage to propose to her. Jenny rejects him, but they end up making love. The next day, Jenny breaks Forrest's heart by leaving without saying anything. Forrest, unsure of what to do, decides to run. He runs and runs, more than ever before, for 3 years, traversing the country from coast to coast. Soon, he becomes the headline of all news, and many people join him. As he runs, he provides brilliant business ideas to several who accompany him, and these ideas turn out to be very successful. However, one day, out of nowhere and in the middle of the desert, Forrest decides to stop and return home. When he returns, he receives a letter from Jenny asking him to come see her in her town. This is why Forrest has been waiting all this time on the bench. He's waiting for the bus that will take him to see Jenny. However, a lady overhears and informs him that the address is very close. So, Forrest gets up and runs until he reunites with Jenny. She confesses that they have a child, and he's named after Forrest. Forrest is astonished but gets to know and talks with him for a while. Soon, Jenny reveals that she is sick with an unknown virus and doesn't know how much time she has left. She then asks Forrest to marry her. Jenny and Forrest get married, and Lieutenant Dan arrives at the ceremony with his new pair of legs, introducing his fiancée Susan. After the wedding, Jenny, Forrest, and their son lead a happy life. Jenny passes away, and Forrest buries her beneath their favorite childhood tree, visiting her every day. Finally, Forrest accompanies his son to the bus stop and waits with him for the bus that will take him to school, just as his mother did. When this movie premiered in Japan, they titled it Forrest Gump Ichigo Ichi. Ichigo Ichi translates to, "What is happening that will never happen again." This Japanese concept suggests fully attending to and appreciating each moment, valuing every instant, and understanding its irreversibility. Ichigo Ichi is about being completely present without distractions in what we do and with the people around us. Forrest Gump embodies this concept, a life harmony where the character has unexpected and casual encounters with others but turns them into something extraordinary and memorable. If you've made it this far, I sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support means a lot to me. If you're not subscribed to my channel, I invite you to do so right now and enjoy all the content we create for you.